So the theme of this roundtable is basically is training and overrated the use of gamification in training an overrated practice, or does it really have an added value? So will we have a microphone, a wireless microphone? Can I? Test. So I prepared a set of questions, and of course it is open to other questions. So based on the experience of some large corporations, gamification has proven to be useful, to have some added values. Nevertheless, it is still considered by some people as overrated, as superfluous to training. So what are the reasons behind this position? What is your position with respect to this subject? Is there enough evidence in the literature about the positive impact of gamification in employee training? And do you have a personal experience with the application of gamification to business context? And last but not least, should gamification then be considered as a nice-to-have training practice, or is it really essential? Does it have a real added value? The floor is yours.
Yeah? Okay, yeah. Interesting question about do you have enough literature about using games for education, for example. When I made my game book, a lot of questions came like, do they learn better with the game book or not? And this is very difficult a very difficult question, because is it the goal to learn better when you have a serious games, or is just you learn it like before, but you have fun? Yeah. So that's the problem when I see. I have no question about do they learn better when you use serious games. Maybe anybody of you have an answer for that.
Perhaps do they participate more because the context is more fun?
Yeah, actually they are motivated. They are more motivated to learn. But maybe it takes longer to learn because they make more. But the effect, when you measure effects, you want to have the quality. You measure the quality. Do they learn better? Do they know more, for example? And I think nobody measures, do they have more fun when learning? Maybe you learn not better, but you have more fun. Which one is better?
I think it's coming to the attention you get. My personal feeling, I don't rely on lots of literature or things like that, but the main draws I've seen in serious gaming is like mostly people like focus on the seriousness of what the end goal is, and they forget about the games. And making a game that is attractive is already a good challenge. We see that if you take just entertainment, you see the number of games that is like coming on the market, video games or other type of game, board games or whatever. And it's already difficult to make something that is getting the attention of the people which are playing. And a serious game is like adding like another constraint on top of it, because it's not just for pure fun, but you have also like the guy has to come back from the game with something, meaning like physical activity or like knowledge or like maybe train some different skills. Usually like my usual thing is like when you present a serious game, like it's already so much difficult to make a good game. That's a game that people want to play, and it's even more difficult for a serious game. Or, of course, you can attach the people to the game, like in classroom, and say you have to play this game. But then you lose the tricks and the benefit of a serious game, which means like people will learn something because their attention is on the game. So my recommendation is like, when you're making serious game, if you want something out of the game, think of the game first. Because if people don't want to play or won't play, or like it's also linked to the amount of content you will be able to provide into the game, You need to have something that is pertinent, that is interesting, because there's nothing worse than playing a boring serious game, because I prefer to have a boring textbook with just like a list of things that I have to learn by heart, but, instead of playing something that it's like taking a lot of narrative things which are boring just to get to something that I could have learned in 5 minutes by looking to a list.
So it shouldn't go against its purpose. Its purpose is to motivate learning. So maybe you had something to... was the same thing.
I also would like to add that in my opinion it's not exclusive, so it's another way of learning stuff. So we have different media types to learn something, and we have really different approaches to learn something as people. So I think for really visual people who learn in a story, in an environment, and connect things, a serious game is, or should, I think is really an improvement. But there are also like people they learn more from learn by heart or stuff like that, or make matrices of stuff and connect them like this. So probably there a serious game is not an ideal tool to support learning. So it's not exclusive. So it's another option to learn things.
Here we are speaking about learning, but not training, and not training, physical training. So I want to add something about physical training, especially about my part, that was prevention of musculoskeletal disorders. I think now people, they don't do the exercise. That's not like they do them and they don't do them, they're good or that they're bored. The thing is, they just don't do it because they don't see the point, or they're bored, or I don't know. It's not very attractive. It's like when you go to the physiotherapist and you make 10 sessions, and he say, well, when you go home, you have to do all those exercises at home, and you don't do it. I don't do it. I know I should, but you do it for 1 week, 2 weeks, and you have to do it for 6 months, and you don't do it because, it's not attractive. So I think for this, a serious game, the game concept really adds attractiveness to the thing you want to do.
So like one of my early advisors used to say, you show them the carrot. You remember the metaphor? So any experience with training in business contexts? Like when they use training, gamification in training employees to acquire a certain skill?
We work on a project, it's called Serious Moral Game. It trains the awareness of moral in a banking financial context. So this is kind of probably exactly that point. And there it's what was said before, it's connected to an environment where you say the people, they have to play it. It's not the game about they engage themselves. And there it really works well with these people. They like to play the game because for them it's a different way to approach this thematic. So they're not afraid of it or something like that. We imagined that at first, but it's really engaging, and they dive into the material like this, like they didn't have with their paper with the rules of engagement on it. So it really works. But the test case is really limited, so we have this 40 participants, and some of them are still students, not practicing it in the real world yet, so we don't have really significant data yet.
Yeah, so it's not really a matter of acquire professional skills, but on campus EPFL we had some, it's really gamification and nothing about serious games, but it was about learning environmentally friendly habits, and we had a website on which we could report if we did some effort on not printing too many pages, shutting off the light when we exited some rooms, and since I was only a participant, I don't have data on how well this affected the whole behavior, for instance, the electricity consumption of the campus. But it had some popularity, and many people were working together. You could form teams, they compete against each other, so it was a thing.
Yeah, I think there's an interesting aspect about this gamification context, because the task is something, but if you have, like, for example, for training, what is important is that you repeat the stuff every day or things like that, and it's the same for individual habit or for training habits. And there's like the gamification is very important because it's the way you reward, like you were saying the carrot, that if you got a reward system or like some collection aspect or something that is like, we are creature of habits and we like to collect things, we need to gain reward, and the social aspect also is very important. So we can gain something which is what I was saying before and what you are implying when you are saying that it's not that the task itself is, it's what you gain from it. And you can get motivation for this mean, and the meta gameplay and the reward system is a key aspect to take in.
Yeah, from my perspective, I think everyone's kind of said this, you really have to respect play, like what it means to play. And a couple things come to mind when I hear you all talk. One is that there's a very famous board game producer named Bruno Faiduti, and he had an essay on why he hates educational games, and one of the key theses behind it, and I make educational games, so it's important for me to know, is that when you play educational games with kids, when a teacher presents it, they look at it and they know exactly what it is. It's a lie. And they look at you and they think you're a cheater. You're trying to cheat me into learning and by play. And that doesn't work, because kids know what play feels like. And so what comes to mind when I hear when I hear you guys talk is a project that was done by somebody named Jeff Watson at USC, and the name of the project escapes me right now. Come up to me later when I have a chance to Google it. But he basically had a project where he was tasked with bringing together different students within the film school. So at USC, they have a film school, and they have different departments. They have the animation department, the director department, the writing department. He created a game that was a secret game that people had to play completely voluntarily. The way that it was played was you took cards and you used those cards to create film productions. It was not part of your classwork. The cards were collected in a room, which was like, you know, like Harry Potter style, like platform 9 3/4. Like, it didn't exist officially. It was something that people had to voluntarily participate in. And I think as game designers, when we're trying to get people to learn something with our games, they need to come to the game and it should feel like it's truly play, like it's a truly voluntary experience that they have their own stake in. And to that extent, when we do that, then indeed we're opening up the door to a certain subset of people. It's not going to be the thing that's for everybody. We're just designing tools to make our toolbox even bigger so we can reach more people than we could have in the past. That's the way I see things.
Any more interventions from the speakers?
Yes, maybe this aspect of voluntariness, this is very important, I think. I also had a class when I made this game book, and one student said, I never play games, so I don't want to do that. So I had to give all those documents and stuff like that for reading, which was really boring, but these people wanted to do that. So I think the serious games are just an option.
True.
Which have to be voluntary. This is my thinking at the moment, so there is no other solution for me.
So it's another style, like you were saying. It's another kind of practice. It doesn't need to be universally accepted.
There's one thing also, I think is kind of a misconception, because like when you ask people to play a game, like I'm from Norwegen, I'm trying to convert like a lot of people around me, so I play at family dinners or friends' place. And usually, like I see people say, "Oh no, I don't play games. It's for kids. Like I don't care," and stuff like that. And when you say, "Come on," you have to be like, they need to make the first step. But if you can pass explaining the rules and stuff, it's amazing how many people say they hate games. And when you present the right game at the right place, not all gameplay will fit everybody. But I think games are like literature. Like a lot of people don't read and they say, "Oh, books are not interesting." But if you present them the right book for themselves, they will get hooked by it. And I think games is really the same. We always see people who say, "Oh, I don't play at all," and it's wrong. And we've seen the last decade like a really big change, like for example the Wii coming to the for the old people who start playing. We can see also mobile games really change habits. A lot of people never play at all, and they spend like thousands of hours on Candy Crush, for example.
Unfortunately.
Unfortunately, that was not really a lot of reward. But I think there's a misconception about like a lot of people would be enjoying games if they know how to sing, and we need to find some subtle introduction, because forcing them is the most demotivating step you can take.
I can add a fun fact. It also reconnects to a question about elderly people playing games. We had an exhibition where a group of elderly people came and they looked at young people playing our game Plunder Planet, like they hop, skip and jump and stuff like that. And then the young group went away and we engaged them and said, hey, do you want to play Plunder? Oh no, and they made a step back. One had the courage to get into it, and he played almost a quarter an hour Plunder Planet, and he almost overdid himself. So it was almost dangerous because he really got engaged in the game, and he because we can connect the Kinect, that the movements can be a bit slower to guide the game. So he was really into the game, and he was really surprised by himself that this was that easy to dive into the game. So yeah, it's one person. It's like more like a fun factor.
So perhaps there's in the audience someone who would like to give his opinion or.
Just to talk about serious game in education, like I'm interested in topics right now because I found it really interesting. But I think that gamification or serious game in education has to be more supportive for the education than really a mean to educate someone. Like you can do a serious game just to show like a situation, a real situation of something you learn during a lesson, or just to make people in realistic scenes of everyday life. Like if you learn something about accountability, you can make a serious game about it and make it like a real scene of the educational process you did before.
Actually, if I get it well, this is so true in the sense that we went to a gaming a course for gamification in learning, and that's the one message he gave us. If we were to apply a serious game, it has to be complemented with a synthesis of what we've learned with the traditional ways of teaching. It should not be used on its own.
Thank you. I have two challenging questions. It's open question. I don't know if we can answer them. The first one is that we are talking about using gamification, serious game, to help for training and learning. This assumption means that we have like a postulate that learning is not funny by itself. And I don't know, is it learning something new? It's not, cannot be happy by itself, cannot be funny by itself. The fact that we are happy to know something, to discover something. So we need like a modality or a way to make it less boring or painful or whatever. So I don't know. Is it a question of modality, or is it a question that we ask people to learn something that they are not interested in, or the subject is not good, etc.? This is the first question. The second question is mainly because the topic of the roundtable was for training for employee. And my question is, I know that it's not the only objective, but one of the objectives of learning is to prepare people for work. So if you ask someone to learn, suppose for example that we take accounting or finance, and he learned all his life by playing, and then we ask him to spend 8 hours in a boring office to do his job. Is it the right way to do it? So this is my question. Is it necessary to have gamification? Is it possible to invent a way that learning becomes funny by itself? And the second question is, are there any side effect by making everything funny, and then at what point we ask them to work, to be productive with stress, etc., etc.?
Do you have? I do have an answer, but maybe you could start. So regarding the first question, the topic has to be interesting in some way for the people to decide to learn this topic compared to something else. But there's also the way of how we teach this topic. And this is where teachers also, because it's also the profession of many of us, comes into play. How do we make this topic interesting? And gamification should be a means or one alternative to do it. But if you have the most interesting topic, but you don't have, it's not presented in the best way possible, then learning, the objective of learning might not be reached. So there's the topic, but there's also how we present it as people form to deliver some learning.
And there's also, I think, the other part of exactly this. For most people, if they learn something and it is fun, they do it because voluntary, because they like it, they don't consider it learning. So it begins to be learning when it begins to be hard work. So I think we can also see this a lot in games, also in entertaining games, in big public games. There you really learn a bunch of stuff. Much of it you can't use in the real world, but you learn names of items and cities and worlds and geographic stuff. It's absolutely immense what you learn, and it's not considered learning. Because I know the Formula 1 track Monza I can drive it with blinded eyes probably, but for me it was not learning this track, because it was fun, it was a game, so it's not learning. And I think this is also a view of, we had it before, this voluntary thing that a player wants to play the game, that someone wants to learn something, then it's much more easier, but often not considered learning. So.
Yes, just before. I have experience in about the question, do you have something to learn which you are not interested in? My experience, for example, this is the mathematics. Students don't like mathematics. So that's in the 2 days trend, yes. And for years we teach mathematics with mathematicians. Yes, they teach them and students don't like. And I asked them, why do you always use mathematicians? They are so boring when they teaching that. And say, okay, I will create you a course. I'm an engineer. I will create you a course because I think mathematics can be very exciting. And it's if you have storytelling behind, or game books, I made it with game books, then people could like it. And then I made that course for students, which was the last chance for a mathematician course. Yes, because the baddest students they had. And I made this course with storytelling in interactive game books, and they liked that. And they were solving this task in mathematician problems and things like that very easy and a very funful way. And in this way, it worked, I would say. Even they did not like mathematics.
This is actually exactly what I was going to say. We learn best when the thing that we're learning seems like it's a tool. We as humans, we want to conquer the world. We need to learn things that are tools. And when it feels like it's a tool, that it helps us, then we learn better. So whether you do that through a game or through just being a better educator, I think that there's a lot of value in that. Another thing I just add, from a personal standpoint, I personally attribute a lot of the successes I had when I was in school, in retrospect, to the fact that I conceptualized school as a game. There's a way in which school fits with what a game is. There are certain rules that you have to abide by or not abide by. There are certain boundaries that you can push, and you can see what you can get away with and what you can't get away with. There's, especially when you get into higher education, there's an extent to which you're being asked to figure out what the rules of the game are. A teacher gives you a rubric, and you're trying to, and when you can, Yes, and I think if teachers are exactly. So I think if teachers conceptualize their job like that, like inducting somebody within a game, then I think that could also be beneficial to people.
So thank you. I think it's the end of the session, but to answer the second question, if I may, and I think it would be a nice closure. We live in a society where I noticed that especially this generation, without having enough data to say it, but just by observation, they are playing all the time, whether on their phones, whether it's constant addiction to play, even to games. So that raises a problem also in business context, or when we employ them, of how are they going to adjust to the traditional way of working, etc. So if we take their addiction, or let's say at least their interest in gaming, and we teach them to employ it in a context where they will learn something, where they will acquire a skill through gaming, that's better than playing for the sake of playing. So, voilà. Thank you very much.